What's good, y'all? BeatGenerals.com back with a brand new tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be doing a Bryson Tiller type beat. This particular beat I actually previewed a couple weeks ago in the IG stories, and a lot of you guys hit me up about it, so I decided this would be a good first beat in the series. So there's actually a thread about it on the forum. Check it out. Leave suggestions for what tracks you'd like to see featured in the Bryson Tiller tutorial series. We also have the weekend series coming up. For the actual weekend tutorial, I kind of got tired of just doing weekend tutorials without vocals, so for that series, or actually not series, but that little tutorial, it was actually supposed to be one song, but we ended up doing like 7 songs in 3 days. With hooks and stuff like that. So we have those done to use for tutorials and actually for placement, so it's going to be kind of tough to choose which ones end up as tutorials and which ones end up just kind of going out there, but either way I'll keep you guys updated. But basically we have those recorded. We just kind of had them recorded on a bad mic, and the vocals just were kind of really rough, so we're having him re-record everything on a much better mic setup. So I'm just waiting for all that equipment to get to him to go ahead and re-record those, and then I was hoping to show you guys a tutorial on the beat, talk a little about the songwriting process, how to kind of work with singers, a little kind of tips that I have that work out for me, and then kind of show you how the song was probably mixed, how the vocals were stacked and stuff like that. With some of these R&B hooks, things like that can be a little bit tricky, so that's the hope for that series. So be on the lookout for that. That should be ready here soon. But without further talking, let's go ahead and jump to the next chapter and get started on this tutorial. So before we actually just jump into the beat, I just want to quickly talk about where I find samples like this, and just a method I've been kind of using lately. Basically what I've been doing when I'm looking for these Bryson Tiller or just these kind of ambient type samples is I've been just going on Spotify and just searching like different terms with R&B at the end. So things like ambient R&B, alternative R&B, just stuff like that, and just going through random playlists and the different results that pop up, and just kind of finding songs. And it's actually been working really well for me personally. I feel like every single time I've done that lately, I always find some kind of dope sample I really like. So if you have trouble finding samples, it's a good way to kind of go about it, and you can really use the same method for any kind of samples you want to use, just because the Spotify library is so kind of crazy big. So that's kind of where I got this sample, and like I said, if you're struggling, definitely try that out and see if it works out for you. So this is what the sample sounds like. This is the little hook piece we're going to be using.
Still fresh.
So this sample has a ton of different chops you could use if any of you guys want to try sampling or flipping it. This is just the part I picked, but it has a ton of usable parts in it. And then I also have a different part. This is going to be for the intro piece. Okay, so that's going to be a little intro piece, and then there's a little verse piece, and I'll show you guys that later. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the next section, and I'll show you guys the way I'm going to chop these. I'm going to actually chop them on the playlist, and I'll show you guys why in a second. So now to actually get started on it, I'm going to go ahead and start with this little intro piece. So I'm going to just go ahead and drag it into the playlist, just so I have this, and I'm going to go ahead and set my BPM to 100. That's the BPM I ended up using. And now basically I'm gonna try to line this up and then time stretch it to make it fit. So if you actually look at how I chopped this sample, I chopped a little bit before the one and then a little bit after. And the reason for that is sometimes I kind of find it easier just to kind of chop a sample right here on the playlist. And by having the little area before and the little area after, it's going to allow me to be able to kind of chop it precisely and fill in any little gaps just by using this little stretch tool, which allows me to kind of move this in and out so I can perfectly kind of get these loops set up. So that's the thinking behind that. But now I'm just going to go ahead and try to line this up real quick and get it on beat or on time. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you could just let me. It's not enough, my time is up, you're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let me. It's not enough, my time is up. It's not enough, my time is up, you're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let me. It's not enough, my time is up. You're not enough, my time is up. You're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let me. Not enough, my time is up. You're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let my time. It's not enough, my time is up. You're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let. Not enough, my time is up. You're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let. Not enough, my time is up. You're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let. Not enough, my time is up. You're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let. Not enough, my time is up. You're over us. Cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let. Not enough, my time is up. Okay, so I basically have that on beat now, and over here is where it's going to break into the hook. So let's go ahead and jump to the next section, and we'll do that. And actually, just before we moved on, all I did was I just applied an automation with a volume tab on it. Just have like a little intro piece of fade in. You could obviously do this once you export, or just do a master volume automation, but just a quick little fade in like that is what I'm going to use for my intro. So let's jump to the next section and go ahead and adjust this hook. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and grab the main sample, and we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to go ahead and try to time stretch it to get it perfectly on beat. And it looks like we about got it right there, and we want to just make sure that we set these both generic just so that the pitch will match on them. And let's go ahead and check it out. It's
your overalls, 'cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let me. If you just let me. If you just let me. Just let me. Taste of your lips is still fresh.
All right, so something like that. And I should probably play the metronome for you guys just to hear that. I'll play it just right there.
If you just let me. If you just let me.
Okay, so nice and on beat there as well. It sounds like it's slightly jumping. Let me just double check over here. Might need a slight adjustment.
If you just let me. Just let me. 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 If you just.
All right, so I'm more comfortable with that. That sounds about perfect right there. And let's just go ahead and let the loop ride out one more time, and then we'll cut it where needed.
It's not enough, my time is up, your overalls, 'cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let me. If you just let me. If you just let me. Just let me. It's not enough, my time is up, your overalls, 'cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let me.
All right, and then as far as what I was talking about gaps earlier, so for example, what you could do right here is you could go ahead and just take this little stretch off, and you could pull this little audio a little bit further, and then you could literally just go and cut them like this and basically do the same thing I just did it earlier. So basically you would just stretch them both over technically where they would meet, and then just do this to leave absolutely no spaces between them, so you don't get any kind of annoying little gaps. So if we take a listen to that, it should be a nice smooth transition.
It's not enough, my time is up, your overalls, 'cause I think I might do anything for you if you just let me.
All right, so nice and smooth. So let's jump to the next section, and we'll actually start building the beat around this and add the filters and everything that we need to the sample. So now that I kind of had my loop set, I wanted to actually kind of switch up the sample slightly, just for the hook, and just kind of make it a little bit different. It seems like everybody's kind of pitching samples up these days, so I figure why not kind of clone it and then take one sample all the way down, which would basically make sure that all the same notes are playing just on a different octave, so all the keys and the pitch and everything will still match. Oops, that's actually the wrong one. I want to clone this one. And I want to just go ahead and match these up real quick. Okay, so that basically gives me that kind of sound, and I kind of really like that doubled sound, and just was kind of interesting to me. And also kind of reminded me of the producer Shlomo. I don't know if how many of you guys are into him, but I'm actually a big fan of his, so kind of reminded me of his work, so I actually really like that. But anyway, the only thing I didn't really like about it was I didn't really like the way that this sample fades in on these little parts right here. It kind of almost has like a little sour note to it, these little in-between parts. So like right here, these little parts. So let's take a listen to that real quick. I just didn't really think those were too necessary, and I wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit and give it a little bit of variation. So what I did was, I went ahead and I just cut out all these little pieces that are kind of rising up like this. So get rid of that. Get rid of it over here. And then I also believe I got rid of this little last part. So from right here, it's going to transition into the verse. So let's go ahead and take a listen to it now.
Just let me. If you just let me. If you just let me. Just let me. Let me. If you just let me. If you just let me. Just let me. Let me. If you just let me.
Okay, so something like that sounds good to me. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead to the next section. We're going to go ahead and throw the effects that I used on this sample.